Welcome to Kaywon Action Star.
It was a jerkwater town, maybe 50 miles from the border.
It's such a free country. I don't like it here much.
Back in 1930, in the quiet little town of Jericho, Texas, about 50 miles from the Mexican border, two rival gangs are locked in a power struggle over the lucrative illegal trade running through the area. One faction is led by Fredo Strozzi, an Italian mobster, while the other is controlled by an Irishman known as Mr. Doyle. The local law enforcement is practically useless, having long abandoned any real efforts to restore order. The sheriff, instead of upholding the law, seems more interested in turning the chaos to his advantage. One day, a drifter named John Smith rolls into town. He calls himself a lone wolf, a man with no regrets. Almost immediately, he stirs up trouble by catching the attention of Felina, a woman associated with Doyle. One of Doyle's men, Finn, doesn't appreciate Smith's interest in her and confronts him. Heated words quickly turn into action. Finn wrecks Smith's car and then sends him straight to the sheriff. When Smith goes to the sheriff's office to demand justice, he quickly realizes he won't be getting any help. The sheriff, along with his silent deputy Bob, suggests that Smith should fend for himself and maybe even get a gun. With no other options, Smith heads to the local saloon, where the only person around is the bartender, Joe Monday. He orders a drink, then retrieves a pair of guns from his belongings, ready to settle things his own way. Returning to Doyle's headquarters, Smith asks Finn if he plans to take responsibility for the damages. Finn, cocky and sure of himself, makes the first move, but Smith is quicker. He fires several shots, sending Finn flying across the street, dead. The rest of Doyle's men freeze as Smith turns his gun on them. Not long after, Strozzi takes notice of Smith and offers him a place in his crew. With his new alliance, Smith moves into a room in Strozzi's hotel, enjoying free meals and new connections. He meets Lucy, Strozzi's beautiful girlfriend, and learns about Hickey, a cold-blooded enforcer working for Doyle. During a dinner with Strozzi's men, Giorgio, Strozzi's hot-headed cousin, arrives late and immediately takes a dislike to Smith. Smith, unimpressed with Strozzi's leadership, soon starts doubting his ability to control things. Later, while spending time with a prostitute named Wanda, he finds himself the target of an ambush, but the attackers underestimate him. Smith takes them out with ease. It turns out Wanda was forced into setting him up, and when she panics, he knocks her out. Instead of punishing her further, he hands her over to the sheriff. Shortly after, Strozzi arranges a meeting at a remote diner in the desert, where they plan to intercept a shipment Doyle is expecting from Mexico at the border. Smith approaches Ramirez, a Mexican officer overseeing the convoy, and proposes a deal: betray Doyle's men in exchange for a cut. Ramirez agrees, leading to an ambush that wipes out Doyle's people. Later, Smith arranges for Wanda's release from jail and gives her money to escape town. Meanwhile, Smith digs deeper into Hickey's past. Back at Lucy's place, he tries to charm information out of her about Strozzi. Before long, Doyle and his right-hand man, Jack, approach Smith with an offer: help them eliminate Strozzi from the inside. Smith is wary but doesn't give them a clear answer. Doyle assumes it's a refusal and moves on, but Smith decides to play both sides. After resigning from Strozzi's crew, things get heated. Strozzi, furious at Smith's betrayal, pulls a gun on him, making it clear that nobody walks away from his gang. Giorgio, still itching for a fight, picks one with Smith. After a brutal brawl, Smith and Strozzi face off, guns drawn, but Strozzi, realizing Giorgio isn't worth dying for, backs down. Knowing that his rivals are closing in, Smith decides to stay sharp for the next few days. Later, he finds out that Giorgio has been snooping into his past. Using this to his advantage, Smith tells Giorgio to keep an eye on Ramirez, hinting that he might turn on them. Giorgio takes the bait and heads to Mexico, where Smith informs Doyle's gang that Strozzi's cousin is with the very Mexicans who betrayed them, stole their money, and hijacked their trucks. Doyle rewards Smith for the tip but remains suspicious. Soon, Smith comes face to face with Hickey. From the very start, Hickey doesn't trust him, and for good reason. Hickey heads back to Mexico, storms into a bar, guns down Ramirez and a border patrol officer, and hauls Giorgio away. Meanwhile, Smith meets Felina at an old church to hear her side of the story. Back in Jericho, Captain Pickett from the Texas Rangers rolls in, warning both Smith and the sheriff that he's digging into the border officer's murder. He gives them 10 days before he returns with reinforcements, saying only one gang can stay in town. He tells Smith to get lost. Hickey returns with a plan. He offers Strozzi a deal, $100,000, and the stolen trucks in exchange for Giorgio. But Strozzi plays dirty, snatching Felina during the trade. They swap Giorgio for Felina, sparking a new round of tension. Later, Lucy tells Smith that Strozzi and Giorgio found out about her affair with him and punished her, even cutting off part of her ear. Feeling bad, Smith hands her $500 and tells her to take the next bus out of town. Smith decides to take Doyle's offer, demanding $1,000 up front. He hints that Strozzi is bringing extra muscle that night and that Felina could be in trouble again. Doyle panics and sends Smith to check on her. The place is crawling with guards, but Smith walks right in. The gang senses trouble, but before they can react, he opens fire, taking out everyone in his way. He helps Felina into a car and tells her to cross the border. Before leaving, she gives him a cross. Even though he should leave, Smith sticks around to break the news to Doyle. The next morning, Doyle arrives, heartbroken after believing Smith's version of events. But Hickey isn't buying it. Smith returns to Jericho for a bath, but Hickey shows up with bad news. Someone saw Felina selling the car across the border. They also found her cross in Smith's room. He is dragged to Doyle's hideout, where Jack and Hickey beat him to a pulp while Doyle rants about how he saved Felina from a miserable life in Mexico. When they don't get any answers, they leave Smith for dead. The next day, two thugs come back to finish him off, but Smith is gone. He ambushes them from a cabinet, using one as a human shield before taking out the other. Then he makes his escape. Doyle's crew launches a manhunt. Smith hides in the saloon's ice room, slipping a bit of intel to the sheriff, who misleads Doyle by claiming Smith is hiding at Slim's Roadhouse in the desert. Meanwhile, Strozzi and his men are actually hiding there. Doyle's gang torches the place, gunning down anyone who tries to escape. Strozzi and Giorgio beg for mercy, promising to leave town, but Doyle's gang wipes them out. Thinking Smith is dead in the fire. The Irish let their guard down. Smith recuperates in an abandoned church while Joe secretly sneaks him food and medical supplies. The Irish catch on and grab Joe. Gall finds Smith and warns him. With Doyle and Hickey still in Mexico searching for Felina, Smith decides to act. Taking Gall's gun, he storms Strozzi's old hotel, where Joe is being held. On the way, he grabs his lucky hat and passes by the undertaker's shop, one of the few people in town who doesn't want him dead. Smith kicks down the door and starts firing. One by one, the bad guys drop. Chasing Jack upstairs, he finds Joe tied up. Joe signals with his eyes, and Smith shoots through a dresser, killing Jack instantly. Smith takes a hit but disinfects the wound with whiskey before leaving. He props a Tommy gun by the door, a message for Hickey. As the town empties, Gall heads for Houston, and even the Undertaker, one of the last neutral figures in Jericho, decides to skip town. The once chaotic streets are now eerily quiet, the remnants of the gang war lingering in the form of smoldering buildings and lifeless bodies. Inside Strozzi's old hotel, Smith and Joe prepare for the final showdown. Joe takes cover, his nerves steady despite everything, while Smith, wounded but determined, positions himself for what's to come. The silence is soon broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Doyle and Hickey have returned from Mexico, unaware that their reign is about to end. Doyle, looking weary and desperate, enters first. He raises his hands, his voice laced with regret, and offers a truce, claiming he's had enough bloodshed. But Joe, filled with rage over the destruction of their town and the innocent lives lost, doesn't hesitate. He jumps out from hiding and fires. The bullets hit Doyle square in the chest, his eyes widening in shock before he collapses onto the ground, dead before he can utter another word. Bob, the silent but ever-present deputy, reacts instantly, reaching for his shotgun. But Smith is faster. His guns blaze, and multiple shots hit Bob, sending him crashing to the floor in a heap, his weapon slipping from his grasp. As the dust settles, Hickey stands alone, watching as his allies fall. Calm and composed, he drops his weapon and slowly begins walking away. "I don't want to die in Texas," he mutters, his voice carrying both resignation and a hint of challenge. He turns his back on Smith but pauses, glancing over his shoulder. Would you really shoot an unarmed man in the back? He asks, his tone almost mocking. Smith, his face unreadable, replies coldly, I've done worse. For a moment, it seems like Hickey might walk away, but in the blink of an eye, he reaches for the small pistol hidden inside his coat. Time slows as he spins around, his gun raised, ready to fire. But Smith is quicker. A single shot rings out, echoing through the empty streets. The bullet finds its mark, hitting Hickey square between the eyes. He stands frozen for a second, his expression blank, before his body crumples to the ground, lifeless. The town of Jericho, once a battleground for two ruthless gangs, is now silent. Smith takes a deep breath, holsters his gun, and looks around. There's nothing left for him here. With Joe watching from a distance, he steps over Hickey's body and walks toward the horizon, leaving the wreckage behind. No farewells, no second glances, just a lone gunslinger, moving on to the next town, where trouble surely awaits. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel for more beautiful recaps like this. Put down your comments below to let me know what you think about the turn of events in this storyline. And also give my video a thumbs up to further motivate me. Share too for others to enjoy. Until my next recap, cheers.